Hey everybody, welcome to Game Theory. Um, we've got one more tools video that we're going to go over. And this time we're going to talk about taking notes and how to put mathematics into our notes and notebooks. Okay, and it turns out that the notebooks we use in the Data Hub come already with a markdown language, and it's interesting because there are some basic formatting features that it includes, as you can see. So let's jump right in, right? Let's jump into our notebook. Okay, and we're going to execute the initialization code there. And the first thing I want to do, though, is I want to show you that I can add this stuff in. Let me show you. If I hit the plus sign, it opens up a blank cell. If I switch from code to markdown, now I can type text. And again, I can do this first point and notice that it's already created this bulleted list environment with just the dash. I'm just using the minus sign, right? And when I hit run or shift enter, boom, it switches to bulleted lists, okay? And by the way, I can also do a numbered list if I just do one period space and then type and then, oh, there we go. The two period space is coming right up. And as I enter, I use the minus sign for bulleted list. I just use one period space and start typing for a enumerated list, a numbered list. All right. Also, we make the point that we have these heading levels, okay, and you can see them. And we'll also talk about bold text and italics, and we'll come back to that in just a second. Okay, let me just say that this would be a first level heading now. That's what we're using at the top, so I probably want to use a second level heading. And in a markdown cell, right, as long as I'm in markdown, if I start with the double hashtag and a space, I get a second level heading. Three hashtags, three hashtags and a space, right? I get a third level heading, right? So they're successively smaller. They're bold, and they are not centered. They are left justified. Okay. But it's a nice way to say, here's an important note. Here's an important note about expected value. Let's just say that that's what I'm taking notes on, right? There's a way I just open up another cell in the notebook, and then when I come back to it, this is going to be saved, right? And notice that I can hit save. The save button here or Control S will work. All right, and in the full screen view, you will see a autosave last created. It gives you that checkpoint created notification to let you know when the most recent save was done. All right. What else are we going to learn? If I want to do bold face text, I just enclose the text I want to be bold in double asterisks, right? If I want italics, I do single asterisk enclosure. Sorry, single asterisk enclosure for italics. All right. So again, if I want to take more notes than are in the notebook, I get I just wanted to show you how to open up a new cell, make it markdown, and start using some of the formatting options. All right. It turns out that some HTML does work, not a ton, admittedly. Sometimes I can force a hard return. Um, the missed markdown doesn't always put hard returns in where I want them. Okay. I can create boldface text. I can use the center tag. And let me just see if we can center some text. Again, this is something that Python doesn't normally do. Excuse me, the missed markdown doesn't do very well. So let's try it. Here is some centered text. Okay, so this is what we want to center. What am I going to do? I'm going to type, right? It's actually less than greater than, but those are the two keys, and I want to put center. And what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to copy paste. Why? Because the ending tag in HTML is the same as the opening tag, except for I have the forward slash. And there you go. So now I've centered the text. And again, baby HTML, I can use the bold tag and the close bold tag. And now I have centered and bold. Okay, so we want to try to avoid using HTML when we can because, again, it's a little clunky and also it doesn't always work. Um, it does help us that the markdown is in an HTML arena, right? So we can use HTML at times, but we want to avoid. That's why I said baby HTML on the slide, right? Because we don't really want to get too deep into HTML coding in our notebooks. All right. Now, the cool thing about our missed markdown is that it comes with LaTeX or $mathematics already embedded, right? That's already included in what we're doing. Every notebook has this ready to go, and I just enclose my equation in dollar signs, and I have mathematics produced, okay? And so we're going to look at a few things, right? But we will want to create a vector. Why? Because if Rose has three strategy, row one, row two, and row three are all different strategies she can play, she might have a strategy mixture, which will report as a vector. And the values inside the matrix, R sub 1, R sub 2, R sub 3, they have to be between 0 and 1, and they have to sum to 1. It just makes sense. We're talking about a percentage of time she's going to play each of her three strategies. And they have to be between 0 and 1 because they're percentage of the times. They're proportions of the time she's going to play each one. So that can be like 20, 20, and 60, I think would be right. So 0.2, 0.2, and 0.6 might make sense, right? They have to sum to 1, right? And each of the values has to be between 0 and 1, inclusive of the endpoints, right? I could have the vector 1, 0, 0 or 0, 1, 0, and that would indicate a pure strategy solution. We'll talk more about that. I might have a mixed strategy solution. And we eventually also want to use the same environment. It's the array environment that we will end up using for both vectors and for matrices, right? And we're going to use the array environment to create, game matrix with subtitles there for the players. Okay, so let's jump into our notebook and see if we can get started on that. Okay, and by the way, if I select this blue bar here to the left, I can hit DD, and that's the delete. Now, warning, it is great that it's really easy to delete things, but it's also really bad that it's easy to delete things. Here's the problem. If I'm typing inside a command block, and let's say import, and I evaluated, but then I realized, oh, I didn't want the import. I can use Control Z, right? I can edit undo, and same thing, you can get it in the menu up here. I can do edit undo. I just did Control Z. And so inside a markdown cell or a code cell, Control Z will undo, and it's pretty good. It's not infinitely persistent, but for 30 to 90 seconds after I execute a cell, I can go back and do edit undo. The problem is when I delete a cell, there's no edit undo. There's no way to get a cell back that's been deleted. So when you're using the hotkey on your keyboard, DD, to delete a cell, that's great. But sometimes we want to delete 4 or 5 cells at once, and deleting an extra cell is really easy to do, in DD, 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 DD with your deletions. But you delete that extra cell, and suddenly a piece of code that you worked a long time to produce is gone and it's not recoverable. All right, so that warning hopefully will will be good. Okay, so first task. All right, they want us to create this following polynomial. All right, so let's start with a dollar sign. The dollar sign mathematics always starts with a dollar sign. Exponents, we use the caret feature to get the exponents. I'm going to do minus 3x. I'm going to do plus 1 equals 0. And a lot of my students ask me, well, why do you put in these spaces? And I tend to put spaces around operators, right? So I tend to put spaces around operations, around equal signs and equalities. Why do I do it? Well, I do it because I can see it better, right? But I'm old. I'm in my 50s, you're in your 20s. Maybe you don't need that. What's going on here? LaTeX doesn't work. Dollar sign mathematics doesn't work in programming mode. I have to be in markdown mode, and then cha-ching. So the single dollar signs will just make an inline equation, right? But if I do double dollar signs, it goes to display mode and centers it. So I've got some options to create these polynomials. And task 2 says create a vector in R3 with, and it tells me the components for R sub 1, R sub 2, and R sub 3. Okay? So first of all, to get the vector, I want to do vec R equals. Now, you'll see in a lot of places that they'll say, hey, the syntax is vec, curly parentheses, curly brackets open, curly brackets close. And that's true. Again, I need to make sure that I'm in markdown mode and put the dollar signs around it. Sorry, got to do the enclosures, right? And I do get the vector R that way. It turns out, though, that some of these commands in LaTeX, they're just going to apply to the very next symbol. So I can do vec space R, backslash vec space R, or I can do backslash vec open curly brackets R close curly brackets, and that's fine. Now, when we have some subscripts and so forth, sometimes we do want to use the curly brackets with the vector symbol. Okay, so now let's do the part where we create the array. All right, so I'm going to do begin curly brackets array. And let's just close it right now too. To do it, you just do begin and end. And inside the curly brackets, you tell it what environment you want in between. So these are the enclosures for an array. All right, and now the things are going to go in it. The first thing that goes in it is there's a second curly brackets after the begin statement that tells me whether my cells in the matrix are going to be right justified, right, that would be an R, or left justified with an L, or center justified with a C. Now, I tend to use right justified. Why? Because the minus signs are going to look a little better. And we can play around with that. But let's get into the matrix now. So my first row, first column is a 2, and then double backslashes to end the line, right? It's just a vector, right? So there's only one item in each row, and double backslashes will separate the two rows. And there you go. Now the problem is we don't have the enclosures. We don't have, parentheses or square brackets or anything to enclose that. Let's add those in. I'm going to do backslash left, and I'm going to use square brackets. I'm going to go after the end array, and I'm going to do what? Backslash right, square brackets, Y. Okay. If I don't use the backslash left and backslash right with my enclosures for the vector values, it won't resize my enclosures, right? So let's just, let's say, do parentheses. Let's suppose we were enclosing the array in parentheses, and it looks awkward because it hasn't resized the enclosures. What's cool is when I use this environment, right? Backslash left, backslash right, Now it resizes my enclosures for whatever is between the backslash left and the backslash right. So, and again, sometimes if I have a polynomial or some equations have superscripts and subscripts, and they look a little awkward if I don't use the enclosures. I can always throw in a backslash left, backslash right, so that the parentheses or square brackets or whatever I'm using resized for the material that's in between. Okay, now I tend to use the square brackets, so I'm just going to switch to square brackets, braces as some people call them. And there we go. I've created a vector in R3 and it's got components 2, 1, and -4. Again, let's just look at one more thing. Look at what happens if I center, and you can if you want to, but it centers the -1, but that's 2 characters, 2 symbols. So it doesn't look horrible, but to my eye, it looks better like this, okay? And but you can use either, right? In the square brackets after the array, excuse me, the curly brackets after the array, you can use an R, you can use a C for centered, and you can use an L for left. It tells how things are going to be justified, right? Um, and the next task is to create a matrix with a top row of 0, 1, and 4. Okay, so what are we going to do? At the moment, I'm just going to do begin array, and I'm going to do backslash end array. Why? I'm just getting the array out there, right? And I'm going to come here, and now I have 3 columns. So notice that I have 3 R's. Why? Because I want all 3 columns to be right justified. Okay, and I'm allowed to do CCC if I want all 3 columns to be center justified, LLL. So I specify the number of columns and the justification for each column, and I can do different. I can do, hey, the first one's going to be center justified, and the next 2 are going to be right justified, right? That will still specify 3 columns. I'm going to use RRR, and then I'm going to do what? I'm going to go 0, that's my first element, and I'm going to do a ampersand. That's the 7 key, the symbol on the 7 key. And I'm going to do a -1 and the ampersand and a 4. And then oh, I see what I did here. This needs to be a backslash. All right. And then 2 ampersand 1 ampersand 2. And let me close this with a $sign. Oh, and let me switch to Markdown. And I've got what I need. Let's jump back in and just make sure we see. So I separate the entries in the first row with an ampersand. And that ampersand figure helps me move to the next cell. And then I end a line with a double backslash. So I know that it's going to go to the next row in the matrix. Okay? All right, and I might want to do certain things with it. Let me just show you this, and then we'll erase it. What happens if I put a vertical line? So I'm using the backslash, which is between the enter and the backspace key, right? But I'm doing shift, and it gives me that vertical line there. And now I've got a vertical line between column 1 and column 2. And notice that it puts in that vertical line between column 1 and column 2. Interesting. So I've got this ability to add in a vertical line. Do I have the ability to add a horizontal line? I do. It's \h line. And what's it going to do? Well, it's right after the hard return for row 1, right? And I have an H line, so what does it do? It puts a horizontal line before it starts the next row. Okay, now I'm going to take those out because that's not how we want to display it. That's going to be used later. All right. So add player subtitles to the game above is what we want to do, right? We want to have the row player subtitle out here and the column player subtitle out here. And I'm just going to say that this is a nested array. I have a 2 by 2 array, right? And then inside the 2 by 2 array, I have in the bottom right the matrix game array. Okay? But notice that I have my strategies listed as A and B, and I have these vertical lines. So I was showing you a little bit about that. Let's continue with that. Let's get our matrix game with the A's and the B's in it and the vertical lines. So let's jump back into our notebook. Sorry, jump back into our notebook. And what am I going to do? Well, okay, now I want an extra column. Why? Because I'm going to have a column for row strategy A and row strategy B. But the interesting thing is, I mean, that works. And now I have the A's and the B's. Sorry, I didn't put in an ampersand as I need to. So ampersand, there we go. And I can even put in the vertical line, right? But I need another row up top to have room for the A, the B, and the C for the column player strategy names, okay? But that's going to go in here, and notice that I'm going to leave a blank space. I'm going to start with an ampersand up there. Why? Because then I'm going to do an A and an ampersand and a B and an ampersand and a C. And there we go. But then I need the H line command, \H line, to get that horizontal line in. All right. So now notice that our game matrix is correct. It has the column player strategy names, A, B, and C. It has the row player strategy name. And so now I've got to add the player subtitles. Okay. So I have the code I need to insert. Let's just create the external array to add the subtitles. Okay, so what am I going to do? And I'm going to do double $signs Y. Well, you'll see. Begin array. And at the moment, I am going to do centered, end array. And I'm going to end my enclosures. In other words, LaTeX, $mathematics, it always has enclosures, right? A beginning and an end. And so I try to do them both at the same time and then work in the middle. That's just how it works for me. I'm going to have a blank in the top left, and then I'm going to have text to display the column player. Okay, \text and colon. And then I'm going to do the double / to get into the next row. And I'm also going to use text again for rows. And then I'm going to put an ampersand. And at the moment, I'm just going to put a 0 in there. Why? So you can see how we're working, how it's working. And I need to make this markdown. And it's markdown. And you can see that now I have rows and column. And by the way, I have to give credit to Philip Strafen. It is a book I recommended on the main start page for our textbook. It's a really good book on game theory, but the player that plays the column strategies, he calls Colin. And the player that plays the row strategies, who plays the rows, as it were, he calls rows and Colin. And I don't know that he came up with it or where he discovered it, but that's where I discovered it, was reading his book. So credit to Philip Strafen. And I will tend to use these. It's easier rather than player one, player two type things, just rows and column for the row player and the column player in a matrix game. Now what I need to do is where that 0 is, right? Where the 0 is, I need to insert this matrix that's right up here. So let me get rid of the scribbles and scroll up. Why? Because I need this code. I don't need the $signs because they're down below, but I need this code. So I'm hitting edit copy, And where the 0 goes, right, I'm hitting edit paste. And now what do I have? Okay. Now, I will show this, and I don't know that it'll show up, but to get boldface text, it's text BF. And so let me just see if I can get boldface text for the player names to show. Yes, they are showing up. Um, Again, some of the more advanced features of LaTeX don't always work in Mist, in these Data Hub notebooks. All the basic features work, and all the equations we need to, but some of the fancier things, some of the more complicated things don't work as well. But text BF, so let me just, right, so text BF will be bold-faced. I can do text IT for italics. I don't really need these all that often because I can use the double asterisk or the single asterisk and just, make it text. Um, but inside the dollar signs, it's a LaTeX environment. And if I need, text IT or text BF, that's how I create the things I need to create. And one final thing that we're going to talk about is the align environment, and it'll create several equations, and we can line them up um, and make them look nice. So sorry, I don't have a slide for that. Let me show you what we're doing. All right, so I'm going to do this again, double dollar sign to center it so that you can see how it works. And I'm going to do backslash begin align. I'm going to do backslash end align. Like I said, I always get both of my enclosures set up. And then they want v sub r. Okay, well, the superscripts are with a caret and the subscripts are with the underscore. So v underscore r is going to give me v sub r equals 2. And then the double backslash will finish that line. And then v underscore c is going to give me a v sub c equals -2. Okay. And at the moment, it's saying invalid syntax, first of all, because I'm not in Markdown, but you'll see in just a second, it's still not right. I haven't closed it. I haven't closed the double dollar signs. And at the moment, I haven't put in my alignment character. So let's say that I put in my alignment character, which is an ampersand, right in front of the equal sign. And it doesn't seem to like it. Let me jump back. Single dollar signs. Oh, I'm in Markdown mode. Maybe should help. There we go. And the double dollar signs will work in Markdown mode. So double dollar sign, boom. And now you can see that the equal signs are aligned, right? Well, let me create the second thing. So inside the enclosure here, after -2, I can go with my double backslash. Then I want vec r ampersand equals. And then let me just put them in a row vector instead of a column vector. So 0.3, comma, 0.3, comma, 0.4. Yeah, that'd be 0.6 plus 0.4. So those add up correctly. And then double backslash, and I can do vec backslash vec c for colon, ampersand equals. And this one is what? 0.3, comma, 0.5, comma, 0.2. And now you can see that it's created all three equations, it's centered them, and the group has been aligned based on that ampersand. So the ampersand in each, here, let's just put some hard returns in there so we can see what's going on, right? It's lining up based on the ampersand. And I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, based on the ampersand here and here and here and here. That's the alignment character. Okay? And just like Python commands will ignore spaces, LaTeX commands also ignore spaces. So I tend to do it all in one line. Kind of keeps me tracking. but you can add in some hard returns and some spacing so that you see what's happening as you code. Okay, so that's a quick overview of the kinds of things we're going to need in game theory. And, we've got the players, we've got the row strategies A and B, right? So row strategy A is these three outcomes, row strategy B is these three outcomes. So we're getting a little bit of the flavor of what we're going to be doing, but this is the second Tech Tool video, and pretty soon we're going to jump into content. And I'll be back soon.